So next up, we are going to have Zach speaking. Zach's going to be talking to us about Server. We all love Server. It's can be a bit of a beast, so it's always good to get some people talking about it. So Zach, whenever you're ready.
So hello everyone, this is Zach Geis. Thank you Lorna, and thank you everyone on the team for putting this together. It's awesome to just do everything with the community, so I'm really excited for the opportunity to speak about one of my passions, Tableau Server. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time right here in front of the camera. I'd like to get over here to my PowerPoint, so let's start there. I have taken something that I could probably spend several hours talking about and challenged myself to condense it down into a 30 or 20-minute presentation. So we'll see how well I do. But my goal is to get through this and also leave maybe a minute or two for anybody that has any questions for me. So with that said, as Lorna said, my presentation here is getting started with server activity tracking. The kind of loose agenda here is we're going to talk about the what and the why. So how you get this started, why you might need it, and where to go from here. Actually setting it up if you need to do that from a server side. Building some content with some actual examples and use cases, and then just some more tips so that you can take this and continue down on your way to get further along with building dashboards here. So a brief introduction. Again, my name is Zach Geis. I'm just passionate about data visualization. I love Tableau Server. I work on a large Tableau COE team where I specialize in Tableau Server, kind of general usage of Tableau across large companies, and a couple things here. So I am active on Tableau Public. You can see a little bit of my work in the top and the bottom grayed out. The two little icons there just mean that I'm a desktop certified professional and a server qualified associate. And then there in the middle, of course, you can find me on Twitter if you're interested in following me at ZachsViz. Okay, so why should I care about tracking activity on my server? If you have any sort of role that works with Tableau administration on the server side or even on the business side, you probably find yourself asking a lot of questions about what's happening on Tableau Server, what really you need to care about, how to expand it, all those sort of questions that bubble up to the top. They come up every day. So, how many concurrent users can I have? Do I need to start planning to upgrade my infrastructure? Are items just kind of sitting in queue at certain stages of the day? And things like that. It's just nice to know exactly what's happening on your server so you can pivot, you can adjust, and you can make sure that everyone that's using your infrastructure is given a nice presentation and experience. There are some things that are built into server that allow you to get some information, but some of those are pretty bare bones. So here's an example of traffic to views. This is a very simple data set, and it's very, very light on information. It's very high level. It kind of helps if you just need to know a very light level of information, but if you want to go any further, it really doesn't do the job. There's information here about specific user activity, background task, different things like that, but it just doesn't go very far. So that's why we need to actually get started with something different. So how do we do that? How do we get started? And that's the Postgres repository. Now you might hear me say this under a couple of different names, the workgroups repository, the backend of Tableau. There's a lot of different names for this, but really it's just a Postgres database environment that sits behind every installation of Tableau Server, and it has all the information, the metadata, everything about Tableau stored there, and it pushes back to the navigation interface of Tableau Server, but it also presents itself as a data access layer that you can connect to with Tableau Desktop or other tools. Now first, sometimes you'll need to set this up if it hasn't been done before. There is a simple command, which I took a screenshot of right there, which you can find pretty easily on Tableau's website. But one point that's important is, this is something that's not always known, is you don't actually have to be a server administrator to access this data. all you need is the access to the password for the repository, which is completely different than an actual administrator password. So it's important to delineate that, especially if you're on the business side and you might not have access. You can work usually with your server admins to get access to something like this and start to see the potential of what you can do with that. So my goal is always to spend more time in the product when I do these kind of demos and talks. So that's enough of PowerPoint for now. And I'm going to go ahead and just quickly switch over here to my browser just to talk through this so you have a sense of where we're at. So this is a local instance of Tableau Server that I've installed here on my laptop. So the performance might not be amazing. But what I've done here is I've taken some of my sample content from Tableau Public. I've thrown it up here, gave it some names that sounded a little bit more business facing. And then I've hammered this a little bit with Tab Jolt, which not going to get into that, but that's a good tool as well if you're interested in impersonating users and access and activity on your Tableau server. So that's kind of what I've done to set this up. It's not going to be real usage or real data, but it still will give you a sense of what's happening. And with that, I'll actually go over here to Tableau Desktop. So now that I'm in Tableau Desktop, I'm going to go ahead and connect to Postgres just like anything else. This is just like any other database. So I'll just go over here to PostgreSQL. Now this would be changed out with whatever your connection details are for your server. For my case, again, I'm using a local server, so it's localhost. Typically the same port 8060. Again, a name for this is the workgroup repository, which is workgroup. And then whatever username you password you set up in the command script earlier in TSM. So here it's read only, and I just kept the default password, and I'll sign in. And so now, again, just like any other database, I now have a list of all the views, all the tables that I have access to, and I can start to look at the data itself. So I can go in here very quickly and say, okay, drag the users over, and let's see what happens. So I'll go in here to sheet 1. I've got my fields that are associated with that user level, and I can bring that over and see, okay, here's all my users that I have on here. As you can see, I give them really good names. And I can see the domain information about when they've logged in and everything like that. I can go back over here. And a good time to call out, so there's a lot of different tables and information in here. Most of it you'll probably never touch, even if you get pretty advanced. But the most important and things that you'll use the most often are up here at the top. So anything with an underscore at the top is a view, and it's a view of what is current as of today. What are the current groups? What are the current users, the current views, the current workbooks, et cetera, et cetera. So same thing if I drag workbooks over here and come back in. Now I've got a list of those workbooks. I can even see what project they're associated with, and I can start to just analyze. And not much I can do with this. This is just kind of a list of all the items here. What I might want to do is go into something that's maybe a little bit more informational. So for example, I can go in here and I can say, what are the background tasks? Here's an example without getting too into it. I can see all the actions that are happening in the background on my background process and see the list of those, see how long they took, when they started, if they began at the right time, and all the information that I would need to know to start planning accordingly to maybe adjust my queues, to adjust my schedules so that there's not so much overlap and people aren't waiting. Another example of useful information is here in the HTTP request. So this is anything that comes through HTTP on the server side. I can see all the Bootstrap sessions, all the shows, pretty much anything that happens in the browser. Even if a user filters something, if they export an image, export the data, all of those things can be found here. So I can get really in detail with who is doing what on my server, and maybe I can find things like, hey, they're just using this dashboard as a mechanism to export to Excel, and that's what they're doing every time. Maybe I should have a talk with that team and let them know, you know, that's really not what Tableau's for. Maybe there's some ways that I can work with them to kind of help them use Tableau in a better way. Now, the last one, which I'll go a little bit more in detail with, is historical events. So historical events is really every single event that happens on the Tableau server itself, whether a user is viewing content, whether a workbook is being deleted, whether a schedule is being created, anything like that is captured here in historical events. Now, if I go to sheet 1, and we'll just clear this and look at this, what we've got here is not a lot of information. We've got a date when it was created, so I can go down in there and get a little bit more detail. I've got an ID, and I've got a worker. Not a lot that I can do with that. And the reason being is this is kind of the central heart of a cluster of tables. So what I need to do is actually bring in the corresponding historical tables that correspond with these actual events. So if I'm interested in historical events of a user, what I might do is search for user. There's going to be a historical user table, so meaning a user at a specific time. And I can go in here and say, okay, give me the hist actor user ID, and we'll tie that back over here to the ID of the user. And now if I go back here to the sheet, now I can start getting more meaningful information. I can track these days of activity to a specific user. We've only got 2 active users here in this example, but you can start to get a little bit further. Now I can continue to actually expand on this and add all these different tables, but I think that would probably be a little bit boring. So what I've done instead is I have a separate workbook where I've tied in some more relevant tables. So I have the dimensions of the projects, the users, the sites, and even the event type so that I can track what type of event is occurring in this specific row. So now I can do a little bit more. So now I can go over here and say, okay, let's take this date here and let's take it down back to the day. Maybe let's take it down to the hour just to get a little bit more data. And now I can actually take this and say, okay, I'm interested in just those access views. So whenever a person has clicked on a view, let's just track usage. So that's going to be access view. Now, just to give a sense of the variety of different actions you have here, you can see all of them right here. So when a person accesses a data source, or when they create a site, or when they delete a view or a user, all of that can be tracked in the same cluster of tables. So a lot of information. It kind of takes some time to get used to it, and we're going to focus here just on the access view. So I can now start taking this, and now I'm down to the number of records level, and I can start tracking usage. So now we've got our over time usage perspective, and we can see that, and we can break that out in different ways. Now, this is just the start of something. What you can do is get a little bit more advanced and build kind of a dashboard that associates back to this data. Now, this is a really simple dashboard. I've built many dashboards against the Postgres repository. This is just a quick 15-minute dashboard just to show with a little bit of time that you can build something to easily get a sense of what's happening as far as usage on your server. Excuse me. So I built this in a way that you can get the total views and users. You can get the associated trends, and then you can kind of tie this back with a scatter plot of views to users. And then simply apply a filter and click through and say, okay, let's look at this, or let's look at these. And we can quickly just click through and understand usage of different items. A lot of different directions you can take this, but again, this is just usage. You could take this and build this into performance, into extract, into queues, times, and history, and even just to track the consumption across the server and whether we can handle more concurrency. There's a lot of directions in depth to this, and this is just kind of a high level of where you can go. And speaking of high level, I'm going to switch back now to my presentation and talk through where I would go next if you're interested in proceeding with this and learning a little bit more. So one thing that you can do as far as a tip is you can share this as an admin with the business teams. It's very simple. All you need to do is create a file that has the level of access, in this case a project, and the list of users that should have access to that project. So if we create that and keep that in Excel, it could be a table in a database, whatever it may be, you can then tie that back into your data so that you join this back at the project level. So it's part of your data in the cross data source join. And from there, it's as simple as taking this, and now that we've done that, every row inside of your data has a list of users that should see that row. Now we just check, is a logged in user and a user filter the same or included in that list of users, and use that as a filter. So now we can take that same dashboard, if we build it, share it with tens or hundreds or thousands of users, and just keep it in one location. We don't have to copy and paste and keep redundant versions of that report and share with every team. we can just create one and share it and keep it centralized. Another thing that's important if you want to go further is to read the data dictionary. So Tableau has done a good job of documenting all of the fields, the relationships, the tables, and everything like that here. So you can find that at that link below, all the information about that specific data dictionary for the repository. And also you can use some pre-built content. So it's always good to go through and build things yourself. But sometimes, especially when you have experts in the area, it's good to rely on content that's built for you. So in this case, here's some good content from Matt Cole, where he's went through the effort of actually going through and really cleaning up and adjusting and identifying the appropriate information for all these data sources and then making them available. So from your perspective, all you have to do is take these data sources, download them, and then just adjust it so it's pointing at your Postgres instance, and then you're good to go. You can start building with the events and the web request and the connections and actually analyze the content without building those things yourself. Another good pre-built example is the actual views. So there's several people that have built views. I think the most popular are those from Mark Jackson, where not only is the data source there, the dashboards are there as well. So you just have to change, again, your connection to be your Postgres, and then you have a fully built dashboard set for you where you can get started. And this could be a good sample or starting dashboard where you use that to begin with, and then you move forward from there. Now, one other thing that I'll say before just wrapping up and opening for any questions that you might have is I've also spoken about this topic at TC18. And so if you're interested, you can find a more detailed session on YouTube if you just look up the Tableau channel. And I also plan to make some dashboards like these available from my side here in the near future. So I plan to build some examples for usage and performance and things like that. So keep on the lookout for that. Otherwise, thank you again for everyone for listening in and allowing me to speak to you. And Lorna and anybody, if you have any questions for me, I think we've got a few minutes left.
Thank you, Zach. It's Sarah. So that was awesome. We do have 2 questions.
Okay.
So Will Perkins said, Zach, I wasn't paying attention. Can you repeat this? Smiley face.
Yeah, Will works with me, so he likes to razz me a little bit. So for him specifically, no, never.
You should go and check out YouTube, right?
Right, there you go. You can check out YouTube.
All these things. So yeah, there's in the chat window, Tracy said it's great. It's really useful.
Awesome. Yeah, reach out anytime if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next up we have Michael, who's joining us at 5:40. So we've got around about a 10-minute break. So we're just going to pause for now, and then we'll see Michael at 5:40.